Hello everyone, this is Board Games and Bourbon. I'm Glenn Flaherty, and right now we're going to talk about Ma Big Apple, a new two-player game, 40 minutes from TGG Games, designed by Steve Finn. And this is a remake of a game he previously made called Capo to Capi, Top of the Top, Boss of the Boss. And what you are going to do in this game, it's a two-player game, is all these areas of the board. And by the way, look at that production. How cool is that? You are competing in each of these different areas, trying to have the most presence. At heart, it's a majority control game. You're trying to have the most presence here so that you can win this loot. And these are crates of stolen loot. You're trying to get the most of that, and you're trying to have the most points by the end of the game via that loot. Now, if we look at the board here, look at that production, man. That's the Bronx. You're going to be fighting over the Bronx. That's Harlem. Also, if you get a chance, look at the images on the back of the boards. Man, they're really good. This is Hell's Kitchen. Let's take a look there. How cool. Chinatown. Okay. Little Italy. Let's see what that picture is. Uh-oh. This here is Brooklyn. Little shootout there. And then this right here is actually what separates it from the previous game. It's an action board. It has 6 actions that you can take. Okay, these are the primary actions if you take them. And there's 9 spots here you can take of different costs. The costs kind of go up depending how late you show up. But also, if you put down more people, more troops to activate these locations, you're going to get a secondary benefit. And there's also going to be a war track of sorts called the DA track. Now, I call this a war track because at heart, this is very much like a light war game in the vein of Fort Sumter or 13 Days or Iron Curtain. Those are the ones that kind of come to my mind when I play it. Now, what happens in the game? Well, what you're going to see when you look here is you have these chips. You put these chips down, and these chips are going to represent hidden troops that you're going to have in the game. They're mobsters. I call them troops. They're also called henchmen, but you know. Okay, and every location is going to have a loot to start the game. So this spot up here gets 1, this gets 2, this gets 3, this gets 3, this gets 2, this gets 1. And that's how we're going to organize that board, okay? So you have those to start the game with. And then there's 4 distinct locations in the game. There is the supply, of which you start with 25 mobsters. From that, each round, you're going to get 20 to use per round. From this warehouse, they call it, your troops for the round, you're trying to get them into locations. And if you can look here, there's little cars. You're trying to get them into the cars. Once you get your people into the cars, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them into the center of the board, called the location, and that's what gives you majority control. So you're going to start with 8 things you can do. These 6 down here, plus 2 up here. And those 2 are represented by these dice. You're going to roll these die, and you're probably going to get 2 numbers. So let's say we're going to get a 1, a black 1, and a white 3. Now what that's going to mean is you can place troops on the board. This, by the way, is optional, but if you do take it, the optional first part of the turn, you do have to roll dice and do placements. So I can either, on the white 3 space, and if we look here, there's a white 1, a white 2, and a white 3. On the white 3 space, I can place the other die, which is 1 troop. It says 1, so I can place 1. Or I could have gone to the 1 black space all the way up here, and then I could have placed my 3 troops because the other die was 3. So I could put 3 there, and the max at any location is 3. Once I get a troop onto the board, I'm trying to get it into the center, and that's going to kind of come from down here. Now, the down here part is mandatory. It's mandatory that you place a mobster on the board to block a spot, but it's not mandatory that you take the action. So let's kind of talk about these and talk about how it's going to influence this. This DA track kicks in at the end of every round. So this first action right here says that you can switch cars. So for example, over here, if I was here and I was fighting for these 3 things, but I saw I was massively outnumbered and it wasn't really worth it, maybe I would switch cars and I would come down here because I have a better shot of winning those 2. Okay, so to activate that, there's a spot here that says if I pay 1 troop, I get to activate that. I could place 2 troops. That would allow me to switch cars, but also lets me put a loot down. So a second ago, I switched here because I thought I had a better shot. And then from the overflow, I can add another loot. So maybe now I would have 3, so that improves my chances. Here, if I place 2 troops, I not only switch cards, but I get to move the DA track in the direction of my opponent. And that's pretty important because when we get here, it gives you different powers. If I'm here, I get to expose one of their chips. Here, I get to expose a chip and place a loot. Here, I get to expose one of their chips and I take a loot directly. I get a point. And if I go off the board, I'm just going to get rewards loot to keep directly. Here, if I go here, this action says I leave the side of the board and I go directly to the location, directly into the location, which means I'm already in control of majority. So that's really important. Again, to do that, I would place 1 troop to do that. I could place 2 and I could also play loot. 3 would let me move the DA and that. Here, this lets me not only switch cars, but it also lets me go into the center. It's 1 to do that. I could play another one. It would let me do that, but also do a shootout. And what the shootout means, the shootout's pretty cool. If you can see, the board is kind of broken up into 1, 2, 3 white, 3, 2, 1 black. You choose a die where your enemy is, you roll it. And if you roll a number where your opponent has troops, they lose a troop from the car and it goes back to the supply there. Okay, over here you can switch chips. You're going to realize with gameplay how important it is to change your chip locations. In your first few games, you might be ignoring it, but that's going to really matter, okay? Once you start seeing the lay of the land, you got to start switching those chips again. Remember, they're 1 to 3. You pay 1 person to do that. You pay 2, you can put down a loot as well. Pay 3, you can expose a chip. Over here, this says you can switch loot locations. That's really important in the 3rd round. Remember, the game is 3 rounds because you want to start taking loot away from your opponent. 1 person activates it, 2 switches loot and does a shootout, 3 will switch loot and move the DA. Remember, you want to switch this around. This does not reset at the end of the round, by the way. And then over here is the straight DA action. If you pay 1 person here, you do it. 2, you get the DA and you get to place loot. You place 1, which is interesting. You get the DA and you get to do a shootout again. Last thing I want to mention is how the rounds are going to resolve. So for that, we're going to look up here at the Bronx for an example. So everyone has placed all their people. We're ready to resolve. And when we start up here, what you're going to notice is that the tan player here has 2 people on the board, whereas the blue player has 3. The blue has the majority by 1, so that 1 is going to go into the center. All these troops are going to go back to the supply and probably come back out into the warehouse, okay? So I'm leading there. That's going to influence your decisions as the game goes forward, maybe placing people, maybe getting loot out. But then you also have to resolve the DA track, and wherever this is going to be, you're going to resolve it. So like if this was over here and this said flip a chip and place some loot, I'm probably going to go up here someplace I'm in the lead. I'm going to add loot to my name. I'm going to see what they have there. Ooh, they have a 2. So actually at the end of the game, they're actually winning. They have 2 and I only have 1, so I got to fortify. Anyway, you're going to do that for all 3 rounds. Now, I've played this game 10 times now, and what I've kind of discovered is, okay, first of all, after a few plays, the game really picks up pace. It's really involved, and you are going to feel kind of burdened by what to do, what's the right thing. But as time goes on, the plays get faster. I would say games really are 25 minutes to half an hour max, not the 40 minutes that the box says. I would also say that you're going to realize how important the chips are after more games. As you're playing, you might ignore the chips because you're focused so much on getting placement. 1 or 2 games in, you start realizing, okay, I really got to get these into location. To counterpoint that, you also have to invest in exposing chips early. Okay, exposing your chips early. You're also going to realize after a few plays how much you need to block these spots. Because remember, you can block these spots, but not use it. Taking away powerful spots from your opponent is going to be really important. It also is important because if you choose to do the first part of the game where you're rolling your dice, if you roll a number and you're not able to place that many troops, either because the limit of every spot is 3, let's suppose you rolled a 3 and instead to place 3 and you already had 3, those 3 go right into the supply, so you lose those 3. So you might not be investing as much in that first part and going right here to the block action. Is there strategy in the game? There's a vague strategy. There's a vague strategy over the 3 course rounds of the game because it really is much more a game about responding to your opponent and what they're doing. Like I said, you want to expose those chips early in the game so you kind of see what the other person is doing. Okay, well, they have a 1 here, so maybe I can get ahead there. Okay, they have a 2 here. That's going to be pretty bad. Oh my goodness, they have a 3 here. Okay. Probably not going to win this on troops if they have a 3. So maybe you'll want to start shifting the loot out early. So you want to expose the chips, but the other opponent knows this too. They're going to rebuff you. And so there's this back and forth, this yin and yang to what you're doing. That's really cool. The game is as much about playing the other person as it is about playing the game. In your first round, you're going to just try to get on the board. You're trying to get your people into the cars. In the second round, you're flipping more on flipping your chips, trying to see what things are. And third, you're shifting everything around. So if you're looking for a war game that's pleasantly themed in a setting that you don't normally see with the most amazing top-notch production, look at that. Then Mob Big Apple is going to be for you. Those are the pieces, 1s and 3s. Those are the loot. This is the box with the wonderful insert. Okay, that's going to be Mob Big Apple. If you have questions about gameplay, let me know. I'm happy to answer. I've played it a ton of times. If you're into war games, get it. Like I say, I have 13 days. You know, all those light war games are kind of my bag, so this is right in there as well. So thanks so much, everyone. Take care, ask questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.